If I really had to say exactly what were my top 3 favorite Star Wars films of the entire Skywalker saga, they would definitely have to be, of course, Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, and The Empire Strikes Back. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel for future Star Wars content. Now, with Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker now just 39 days away from its official release by Disney and Lucasfilm, I've personally been watching a lot of the older Star Wars films, the original trilogy, my favorite trilogy of all of them so far, of course. And when we think about George Lucas, we always wonder about, what he originally intended to do with episodes 4, 5, and 6, as well as episodes 1, 2, and 3, etc. And we do know that George, if it weren't for him back in 1977, we wouldn't have Star Wars as it is today. We wouldn't have the originals, the prequels, or even the sequels at that, or even the spin-off films. Now, on top of all of this, I wanted to go over the original ending for, of course, episode 4, or should I say episode 6, Return of the Jedi, of course, by George Lucas, Lawrence Kasdan, and of course, let's not forget about Michael Arndt. Now, what I like about this is that this really does have a darker ending than that of any other Star Wars film at the time. Now, what's really intriguing about all of this is that Star Wars Return of the Jedi marked the very end of the original trilogy, leaving fans with the ending on the forest moon of Endor during the celebration. It's explained that George Lucas, Lawrence Kasdan, and Michael Arndt went through many changes of the ending of the film back in the 1980s before it made its release in 1983. It's described that one of the original drafts of the script for Return of the Jedi was said to include the battle in the throne room of Palpatine on board of his second Death Star between both Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, and Palpatine, where originally Palpatine was going to actually wield a lightsaber and duel with Luke Skywalker while Darth Vader was injured in the background after getting his hand severed by his own son Luke. It's explained that this was all a major part of the ending before the final design of Palpatine was established in the movie, where Palpatine and Luke would engage in a fast-paced lightsaber duel, followed by Luke Skywalker eventually losing the battle against Sidious, where their saber duel would come to an end after Palpatine decides to use Force Lightning on Luke Skywalker, instead, of course, to gain the upper hand. Now, it's explained that this is where Darth Vader lies in the background, where he begins to hear the Force Ghost voices of both Kenobi and Yoda, where at this time, Vader is already back as Anakin Skywalker and has already turned to the light side of the Force, where the Force Ghosts of Yoda and Kenobi appear in front of Luke, blocking the Force Lightning from hitting Skywalker further. And this is also to be done by Palpatine. As time progresses, it's described that eventually Yoda and Kenobi are able to revert the lightning back at Sidious, causing him to fly across the entire throne room before the Force Ghosts vanish. This is where Darth Vader is said to get up and face Palpatine, where Sidious uses Force Lightning on Vader, causing him to nearly die to protect his own son Luke. However, this is where originally there was a far darker ending, where Palpatine convinces Luke to tap into his anger and into the dark side, where Sidious forces him to strike his father down from his last breath, where Luke beheads Darth Vader, giving a connection to the Empire Strikes Back vision sequence on Dagobah, where he beheads him, that was originally said to be used as a form of foreshadowing. This is where Palpatine laughs and Luke picks up Vader's helmet and puts it on, stating, "Now I am Vader," where he later kills Palpatine to rule the galaxy with his sister Leia by his side, where Leia would turn to the dark side later on. This dark ending was completely changed to a more hopeful ending, and that this ending was originally intended because Lucas had planned follow-up films featuring a new hero trying to save Luke from the dark side. So let's go over a couple of parts about this, and as to why, obviously, the movie that we got was the best version of itself, at least in my point of view. But at the same exact time, there's no denying that this sounds amazing. The fact that George Lucas and, of course, Lawrence Kasdan and Michael originally actually planned to have a dark ending just like this, featuring, of course, the interruption of Force Ghosts between both Kenobi and Yoda's Force Ghost protecting Luke Skywalker. Now, I want to go over that segment because this is a very interesting piece that I think a lot of fans are mind-boggled over, is the fact that they are going to be using that concept in The Rise of Skywalker, essentially using these original ideas by George, Lawrence, and Michael for the original script of Return of the Jedi's ending, specifically, of course, before they actually finalized the script and before it released back in 1983. So, the original ending featuring the ghosts of Yoda and Kenobi blocking the lightning from Palpatine hitting Luke Skywalker on the ground was actually all created by both Lawrence and George. And it was a very interesting angle of Star Wars to have the Force ghosts being able to pretty much interfere, especially since Kenobi even told Luke, "I cannot interfere." So that in itself basically undid that, entire scene and was able to allow both, of course, these characters to save Luke from getting killed by Palpatine's Force lightning technique, where they're able to revert the lightning back at Sidious, causing him to fly across the entire throne room. Now, this also matches up with the other leaks for The Rise of Skywalker that we were actually talking about, that they are going to be introducing multiple different Force ghosts that help Rey when she's fighting Sidious against this Force lightning. So you can see the similarities. You really can see, how it's going to be inspired from George Lucas and his original take on Star Wars, and how J.J. Abrams is going to implement all of this into, of course, The Rise of Skywalker. Now, the other piece that I do want to go over that I think a lot of fans are really out of this world crazy about is the fact that originally Luke Skywalker was to actually claim himself as being Darth Vader, after, of course, killing Darth Vader himself by use of his lightsaber and taking him down by beheading him, giving us, once again a connection to the Empire Strikes Back Dagobah vision scene, which I honestly think is very clever. The fact that they were able to really use that idea where it actually connects to the Empire Strikes Back, where you have a literal moment where it connects to the vision where Luke takes off Vader's head in the vision, and how it was originally intended to be used for the ending of Return of the Jedi, where Luke would literally do that in the throne room of Palpatine, where Palpatine tells him to do that, and then eventually Luke kills Palpatine and claims the Empire as his own, where Leia would later join the dark side of the Force by, her brother's side. And that's what I find to be very interesting about this, the fact that it was so much darker in comparison to what we got back in 1983, and how it really does have a massive difference of what we already saw. Now, the other piece that I do want to go over that I think a lot of fans are also, very much intrigued about is the fact that there was a moment in time in which the Force ghosts of both Kenobi and Yoda actually spoke to Vader. And that really does break a lot of rules within the current Star Wars canon, right? The fact that the Force ghosts were able to speak to a dark side user, very interesting stuff, I must add. Now, with that being said, this movie does have a lot going for itself, when it comes to The Rise of Skywalker, and how it's going to be borrowing elements from the original ending of Return of the Jedi. I love Return of the Jedi. It's one of my favorite films out there, apart from Revenge of the Sith and The Empire Strikes Back. My top threes, basically. But The Rise of Skywalker, borrowing elements from this ending of Return of the Jedi, I think is going to be interesting to say the least, to see exactly how well it really compares to the original drafts of the ending of Episode 9. Now, of course, the other piece that I find to be pretty impressive of what George, Lawrence, and Michael put together was a segment in which, of course, Vader was fighting Palpatine, and there was even a saber duel between both Luke and Palpatine. So there was a saber duel between the two, and I can see exactly how that kind of inspired the Anakin and, Dooku lightsaber duels and the other characters that fought him. I think that's a very interesting angle, the fact that George originally wanted to do something like that, something prequel-ish in Return of the Jedi that never made the final cut of the movie or never even got shot. Very interesting stuff, I gotta say. When we think about George, he always had these wild and crazy ideas that never made it to the final cut of the movie or never really got past pre-production, which when they write the script and they make all the concept art and the storyboards, you name it. So that's a very interesting angle of Star Wars, I must add, because when you think about Episode, 6, it really is a story about redemption, right? And this was more about a story of pretty much a character falling down to the dark side, essentially damnation in a sense, where you have Luke Skywalker becoming Vader and he's devolving. He's not really evolving as a hero. He is devolving as a hero and becoming a villain. And that would eventually lead to the moment in which, himself and Leia would rule the new empire, where George originally had follow-up movies planned in episode, 7, 8, and 9 at the time, original drafts of that would actually involve a new hero trying to turn Luke to the light. So anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.